Vidhammer Fantasy.
Welcome back to Vidhammer. I'm Spudlow, and in this video we're covering the third round matchup of the September team tournament at Darkside Comics in Sarasota. This time, Brent and I go up against a lot of shooting from the Dwarves and the Empire armies. You can check out these videos to see how we did in our first two rounds, and the first video starts out with our army description as well. So here's our charge of the gun line in Team Tournament Round 3.
In this round, although we deploy as per the battle line scenario, the victory conditions hinge on the terrain piece in the center. At the end of the game, whoever has the most non-engaged infantry models inside the terrain piece is the winner. If neither side has any, or if it is a tie, then the victor is determined by victory points. Brent and I discussed our strategy after reading the scenario rules and decided that, with the slow movement of the dwarves and the certain defensive posture that our opponents would be taking, our best option was to move towards the center as quickly as possible and try to get our tar pits on the far side of the terrain. They can sit there and soak up damage, and we'll move in with one of our smaller units to the backside as the game ends to grab the victory. They win the roll for board edge and elect to set up on the right side of the screen. For this match, we actually play by our written rules, where each contingent from one side places a unit at the same time. They start with 20 Empire handgunners and 10 Dwarf Thunderers. Since we know where we're going to put our war machines, we go ahead and put them down happily on top of and behind our little hill. They follow with 10 Dwarven Quarrelers and 20 more Empire handgunners. This looks to be a good start for us. With their ranged units stretched across the front of their battle line, there's only room for one horde or 2 bus units that can assault the center. I put my clan rat bunker down near the center as a possible unit to snag the terrain towards the end, while Brent puts his skeleton block just under the hill. I was thinking about putting my slave block down where the clan rats were, but with the team rules, since they couldn't get the general's inspiring presence, and any close combat would surely see the death of the warlock engineer, I figured they would be better off in a less volatile location. For their placements, a unit of dwarven longbeards comes down in the last central position, and the Empire puts their halberdiers behind the dwarf shooters, which is great for us since the longbeards are the only unit that's in position to contest the center. I put my storm vermin down above the clan rats in horde formation to minimize damage from the cannons, and Brent puts down his tomb guard. Then comes the death machines. The dwarves have a bolt thrower, an organ gun, a great cannon, and 2 grudge throwers, while the Empire sets up 2 hell blasters and 2 cannons of their own. Their shooting phase is going to hand us a world of hurt, but with all those rolls on the artillery dice, hopefully a couple of them will blow themselves up. Back over to us, I put down my slaves at the top in horde formation, and Brent puts down his skeletal archers at the bottom. They're on to characters, with 2 engineers for the Empire and 1 for the dwarves all around their artillery units, a runesmith for the longbeards, and the Empire's general and level 4 wizard in with the halberdiers. I put my warlock engineer in with my slaves again. Brent puts Katep with the archers. My chieftain BSB goes with the storm vermin. Brent puts his tomb prince with the tomb guard. My Grey Seer goes with my clan rats, and Brent's Necrotech goes with the tomb guard as well. I roll my spells, and the engineer gets warp lightning, while the Grey Seer gets Wither, Blessed with Filth, Plague, and the dreaded 13th. For their side, the Empire Wizard gets Awakening of the Wood, Flesh to Stone, Throne of Vines, and the Dwellers Below, while the dwarves grumble and sneer. Finally, I place the gutter runners 12 inches from the bolt thrower. With deployment finished, our setup doesn't look too bad. The longbeards are our only big threat, and there are plenty of less beefy units for us to take out. We just have to survive long enough to make it to them. For start of game elements, I end up with 3 Warpstone tokens, and my Storm Vermin get Death Frenzy from the Skaven Brew effect. They win the first turn roll and move up their line a little, trying to make way for the halberdiers. Magic ends up 10 versus 6. The Empire takes all the dice, obviously, and uses their first 5 dice for Throne of Vines on the halberdiers, and get an irresistible force, and they avoid the miscast. They use their last 5 dice for Flesh to Stone on the Longbeards, and get another irresistible force that they avoid. Hooray for 6s. This sucks for us quite a bit. Not that we're denied the chance to dispel, but our prime target, the Longbeards, are now toughness 8, so target priority for our shooting and magic might have to change. On to shooting, things spice up a bit. The Dwarf Cannon shoots for the Warp Lightning Cannon but fails to wound. But the first Empire Cannon takes it out, while the second cannon decides to explode. The Bolt Thrower misses the remaining Warp Lightning Cannon, and both Grudge Throwers aim for the Lightning Cannon as well. The first one misfires and wouldn't be able to fire next round if it weren't for the reloading room, and the second drifts off. So with the first shooting round complete, we only lost 1 Warp Lightning Cannon. I hate to lose them, but it definitely could have been worse. For our turn, I move the Gutter Runners up on the Bolt Thrower, and we march our line forward, the Tomb Kings being a bit slow. And I hold my Clan Rat unit at the edge of the Longbeard's charge range, just in case. Next is Magic, where Brent rolls double 6s for Winds of Fate. The Rune Lord gives them an extra Dispel die, and they channel 1 as well, so our total ends up 12 versus 8. We split up the dice, and Brent takes 7 and I get 3. I eat a Warpstone token and roll 4 dice for Plague on the Halberdiers with Irresistible Force. The spell takes out 22 Halberdiers, but fails to bounce to another unit. The Backlash puts a wound on the Grey Seer and the Warlock Engineer, and takes away 5 of Brent's power dice. He goes for a spell, but with 8 Dispel dice there wasn't much of a chance. For shooting, Brent's archers shoot for the Longbeards, but fail to wound. The Gutter Runners put a wound on the Bolt Thrower. The Poison Wind Mortars shoot for the Longbeards, the first taking out 7 models, while the second one can't stand the pressure of combat and decides to call it a day. The Warp Lightning Cannon takes out 2 Halberdiers and 1 Dwarf Quarreler, and finally I cap off the Doom Rocket with Brent rolling the dice and taking out 13 more Halberdiers. They pass their break test, and as a late action, I lose 3 Storm Vermin to the Skaven Brew's Death Frenzy, which should have been in the compulsory phase. On to turn 2, the Halberdiers reform to 5-wide formation, but other than that, everyone stays in place. Magic ends up 11 versus 8. We actually use 3 dice right off to dispel Throne of Vines. I'm not sure why I used 3 dice for this. It only had a casting cost of 9, and we had 2 level 4 casters on our side, so we really only needed 2 dice for this. Oh well. They recast Throne of Vines with 5 dice, but Brent uses Katep's Dispel Scroll on this and managed to put 2 wounds on their wizard as well. Finally, they used their 6 remaining dice to cast Flesh to Stone on the Dwarves again. We had 5 Dispel dice and another Dispel Scroll, but since we weren't planning on getting into combat with the Dwarves anyways, we decided to throw our dice at it, but we came up short. For shooting, the Empire Cannon takes out the Lightning Cannon. The Grudge Throwers shoot for the Storm Vermin, with the first drifting onto the Slaves and taking out 7, and the second misfires and can't shoot next turn. Both of the Empire's Hellblasters manage to kill 8 skeletons. Then the lower handgunners take out 4 more, as the Dwarf Cannon misfires, gets to re-roll and misfires again, then rolls on the black powder and blows up, and gets to re-roll and blows up again. The Thunderers and Organ Gun do 9 wounds to the Clan Rats, as the upper handgunners do 6 to the Storm Vermin. Finally, the Bolt Thrower takes out 4 more Clan Rats, who pass their panic check, and we move on to our turn. I start off with a charge on the Quarrelers, who elect to flee. I redirect into the Halberdiers, who decide to flee as well, with both units fleeing 3 inches. Brent's skeletons decide to charge the Longbeards, who needed double 6s to make the range, but he ended up with a failed charge range of 5 inches, so they came out ahead on the deal. The Storm Vermin come up short on the Halberdiers, the Gutter Runners make it to the Bolt Thrower, and we move our other units around before jumping into Magic, where it's 10 versus 5. Brent takes 6 dice this time, leaving me with 4. He uses 4 dice for the Incantation of the Desert Wind to move his units up, but it gets dispelled with 4 dice. The Dwarves steal a power die at this point, so Brent uses his last die for the Casket's Light of Death ability on the lower Hellblaster, but the spell fails. I have my Grey Seer eat his last 2 Warpstone tokens and roll all 6 dice for the dreaded 13th on the unit of Quarrelers with Irresistible Force. The spell gets enough to turn the unit into clan rats, and the Grey Seer loses the spell in the miscast. In shooting, I wanted to take out a few more Halberdiers so he would drop below 25% and only be able to rally on a Snake Eyes, but the Poison Wind Mortar was just out of range, so I aimed for the Longbeards instead and get a direct hit, but only managed 3 wounds. In our first combat, the Gutter Runners kill off a single crewman who failed a wound in return, but passed their break test with a green shirt. On the third turn, the Halberdiers rally as their only movement. Later in the turn, they realized that we weren't going to have enough time to play another full round, so with the Longbeards holding short of the central terrain, the victory is just a matter of having the skeletons walk forward. But even with the dwarves on the terrain, the skeletons just have to charge them to switch the winning condition back to victory points. Magic ends up 7 versus 6, and they use 6 dice for Flesh to Stone on the Longbeards again with Irresistible Force. The resultant miscast kills all of the remaining Halberdiers, and only the characters remain, but they pass their break test. Tough bastards. With only a single die remaining and 6 dispel dice, and a scroll, they just end the phase. As the shooting phase starts, the time realization sets in, and they come up with a last-ditch effort to kill off all of our units that could make it into the center. This means killing off all of the skeletons, the clan rats with the Grey Seer, and the newly formed Quarreler clan rats, and the Poison Wind Mortar, though this single wound unit would likely die to damage caused by the central terrain piece each round. Another spicy scenario tidbit. To accomplish all of this, the Empire and Dwarves have 2 Hellblaster volley guns, an organ gun, a great cannon, a grudge thrower, a unit of 10 Thunderers, and 2 units of 20 handgunners at their disposal. This starts to sound doable, and a crowd begins to form as the plan comes to fruition. First objective, kill the skeletons. Angus fires off his Hellblaster, and his first roll on the artillery die is a misfire. He fails to wound with the first Hellblaster, then the lower handgunners score 6. At this point, they reprioritize their target selection, and for maximum efficiency, the Empire Cannon goes for the flank shot on the Dwarfish clan rats that could overshoot into the Storm Vermin. The shot completely overshoots the clan rats, but ends up tagging my BSB, and I fail the Lookout Sir roll. However, Alex lays the ultimate jinx on his teammate.
Yeah, for these guys.
Look out there, my good man. Yeah!
Now watch you roll 1.
Why did you change dice? Because it wasn't changed. Roll that one now. Roll it.
You can go ahead one day.
I'm telling you, Steve, that's been our game. That's been this whole game.
3 Storm Vermin die, then the Thunderers take out 3 clan rats from my Grey Seer's unit. Focus goes back on the skeletons with the second Hellblaster, which only manages a single wound. The Grudge Thrower scores a direct hit on the clan rats and manages to take out all but the Grey Seer and Unit Champion, but they pass their break test. And as the penultimate note for our game, the organ gun blows up. We call the game and walk away with the victory for this round and wind up second in the tournament overall. Not a bad run for our makeshift alliance and some fun games all around. Thanks for watching this battle report. Be sure and check back for more videos each week. Do us a favor and subscribe, like the video if you want to see more, and as always, send us a message if you have any matchups or tactics you'd like to see. Till next time from the Vidhammer crew, keep fighting.
There's a hit. Mark that hit. I rolled like 4 or 5 misses.
And that's one.
That's fun.